The themes that happen in the Footloose musical, it's a really incredibly heartwarming show. It's about a son and their mother who comes to a different town, who is a small town. And actually, I'm not from a small town, but I kind of grew up in a small town, so very much can relate. Actually, grew up in Simi Valley, so like very much can relate to the smaller town mentality, um, which is a great thing to have. But also sometimes, like as you'll see in this show, it takes one person to be able to kind of like cause a stir in it to potentially make things better, you know? So he comes to town. He finds out that we're not allowed to dance. He sees all these kids around here that are just looking bored. They have nothing to do. And he's bored, more importantly. So he kind of like gets the bandwagon together and lets us know that, you know, this is actually not fair. I don't think that one person should be making all the rules and certainly be telling other people how to vote. So he decides to shake things up a bit, and we go on a lot of adventures. And by the end of it, you get to see if Reverend Moore is going to say yes or no to us being able to dance. It's a yes. But yeah, so at the end, he lets us hold a prom, and we get to live our best lives. It's incredible.
So there's quite a few main themes to the musical. I think it's a story about loss. It's a story about a struggling family and them trying to hold together, trying to stick together through the loss of their son and a brother to Ariel. They're trying to stay connected as a family. I think it's a story about a town who that is trying to break out of these really strict religious rules. Um, and not even that they're trying to say this is bad, but they just, you know, they want to be able to celebrate their life and they want to be able to like be kids and enjoy themselves and they're not able to do that in such a strict environment. Um, More than anything, this is a story about forgiveness, and I think just forgiving others, but also more than anything, forgiving yourself. And I know Reverend Shaw has a lot to do with forgiveness and forgiving himself for allowing the parting to happen in the first place. And I'm sure he's dealing with a lot of that guilt, and that's why he's so strict about all these rules. Um, but you can never forgive anyone else if you don't forgive yourself first. So yeah, I think it's a lot to do with that. And let's see. I think just a story at the end of this, a story about celebrating life. And life is short, honestly, and surrounding death and whatnot. Like it's just important to think about what really matters in life, and who truly matters, and like what's worth fighting for and what's worth letting go.
I think the biggest theme of the musical for me is the idea of forgiveness. Barry Pearl, our director, on our first table read of the show, sat us all down and he read us a bit of the director's note of the show. And in the director's note, the person who wrote it specifically mentioned whenever you read the word dance in this show, substitute it in your mind with forgiveness. And I think that's really profound because I think it is true. I think a lot of people think of Footloose and it's like, just about a kid who wants to dance in a town that won't let him. But I think that there's a lot more to the story than that. I think it's about a kid who's feeling a lot of hurt and pain. And I think it's about a town that also has a lot of hurt connected to it. And it's the idea of like letting go of that burden of guilt and forgiving those who have wronged us and forgiving ourselves for holding on to it for far too long. And how do we come back from that pain and how do we move on from it? I think that makes it so much more than just a story about people who like to dance. I think that the music also plays into the theme in that, yeah, it is music that we all know and love. Let's Hear It for the Boy, Holding Out for a Hero, all those Footloose, all those tunes that you know and love. But I think the way it's written into the story makes those things hit a lot harder. I think that the way they're written just makes the characters. It's not so much that, oh, let's just sing them because it's fun to sing them. Let's sing them because the character needs to get something out in this moment that like is represented through this number. So yeah, I think the music is great, but it's written in a way that like furthers the story rather than just like, hey, here's an 80s pop tune instead.
So the story of Footloose centers around, I would say the essence of it deals with loss, the loss of a father, the loss of a father losing a son, and of a son losing a father. The father who loses a son to a horrible car accident, and the son who loses his father is a loss uh, uh, through divorce, even though that divorced father also loses a son. And of course, the son who passes has lost not only his father, but he's lost everybody. And the town in which our hero um, must move to from Chicago, from a great metropolis like Chicago, to this fictitious southern town called Beaumont, not Beaumont, Texas, but Beaumont spelled Bomont, but it does take place in the South. He has moved there because his aunt and uncle live there, because the father has walked out on him and his mother. So they turn to the aunt and uncle who live in Beaumont. They take them in. But this town is rather backwards. And it's backwards and is stuck by virtue of the fact that the father who has lost the son is a reverend. And he, having lost his son to what he believes to be um, alcohol and music, dance, he deprives the entire community from celebrating via dance and song. He feels that if he can't somehow rise above all of this, if he is going to remain depressed, then the whole town is going to remain so. So he sort of rules the roost, and he doesn't allow people to dance. And he has the backing of his board, the board of the what do you call it? The board of directors, if you will, the town hall people, and they all support him in his. They enable him in this rather sad situation, and they too are depressed by the whole thing. And our hero, Ren, is his name, Ren McCormack, who's moved to this town, doesn't believe that this exists. So he decides to help to reform these antiquated rules about dancing and singing. And he helps the Reverend to see the light. So, I did watch the movie, and I remember enjoying the movie at the time and really loving Kevin Bacon's work. And even the movie, though, doesn't really hold up. A lot of holes in the film. But I didn't let that influence me. I knew that we could mine it properly and tell the story. And I believe we have done that. But I think it's a story of loss. But interestingly enough, and I mentioned this in my director's notes, and I mentioned this to the cast too, Dean Pitchford's foreword, the author's notes, suggests that anytime we read the word dancing in the script, we should think to ourselves, forgiveness. And it is also very much about forgiveness. For the Reverend forgiving the universe for dealing him such a bad hand, and Ren forgiving his father for leaving them, basically, so he could blow the charge on that. And I believe that the characters they accomplish that through their ups and downs and ins and outs. And I personally, I grew up without a father. My parents were divorced when I was a year old. So I didn't get to really bond with my father. I knew my father in later years, and he was a part of my life. But it was tough because I didn't bond with him as I did with my mother and my three aunts and grandmother. So there was a loss there, but it wasn't the kind of loss that Ren feels because he spent so many years with his father before his father walked out on them. In my case, it was sort of natural to grow up in this matriarchy, but still a loss nonetheless because all my pals had fathers as well as mothers. So I can relate to this a bit as well. That helped pull me into the experience.
What am I looking forward to when I perform it? Honestly, I think doing any theater production, I always look forward to performing it a slightly different way every night. And I think that's what's super fun about live theater is having, I mean, obviously staying with what you've prepared and what you've rehearsed, right? And keeping the integrity of the show and the story, but also finding something new, discovering something new about your character, connections with the other characters in that world. Or like in my story with Ren, the other lead, you know, finding moments where I haven't before, and kind of digging a little bit deeper in that way. I mean, it's also just such a fun like dance show, and Michelle Elkin's choreography is so fun to perform every night, and so honestly, I look forward to performing those, and you know, gaining all my energy to perform those because it's a lot, but it's been so fun. And also the singing. I love to sing the pop rock ballads. Honestly, genuinely, I think it's so fun to just let it rip. And to really just kind of embrace that kind of 80s pop rock. So I really do look forward to that every night too.
I'm looking forward to just being on stage with those creatives. Honestly, those people put such a smile on my face. If there's ever an ounce of fear, stage fright, nervousness, anything like that, all I gotta do is just look somebody on that stage dead in the eye, and I know that we're on the same page and we're in this together and we're going to make the best show possible. I think that's the part that I look forward to is everybody collectively putting their talents together to make this show incredible, because I love seeing things go from point A to point B, and the show has definitely done that in the best way possible. Yeah, so I look forward to working with these creatives again and these amazing talents.
I think the thing that I'm most excited for whenever I hit the stage, it's obviously super fun to do all the amazing dance numbers and sing all those awesome songs. But I think the thing that is most important to me, and the thing I'm most excited about is honestly like the story and the script that we get to work with and interacting with the other actors on stage. Again, I think a lot of people believe this is just a singy, dancey musical that's just fun, light, and whatever. But I think that highlighting the story and highlighting what these characters truly feel through that is what is most interesting to me. I love hearing afterwards from people. We've already heard it a couple times that like, oh, like the dancing and singing was amazing, but like this scene between you and it was just so real and so raw. And I love hearing that because to me, again, I care more about the story than anything else. And so when I hear things like that, it gives a reason as to why it's so fun to get up there and dance with other people. Yeah, it just makes it worth it to me.
You know, it's funny. People always say, do you get nervous? I don't get nervous. It really is, for me, it's like a sport. You know, it's like that little butterflies, but it's not nervous butterflies. It's just that excitement and to me, like with this show, it's the joy on the faces of these kids. I love to see the pure joy of them doing what they love. You know, we are lucky because it took a while to find this group, but we've found 20 odd kids who have a genuine joy for theater. They're smiling, they're connected, and we're different ages, but there's a great connection with these kids. That synergy that really, I think, really propels them to a level that people want to see. They are truly happy to be doing what they're doing. So that joy, my first scene is I walk in and I'm facing them. They're all sitting there staring at me, and I look at their faces. I can't help but smile because they're so joyful. I don't know. That's in my little weird way. That's so gratifying to see them do that. And many of these kids, I can assure you, many of these kids are going to go on and do bigger and better and greater things. They're so talented. It's ridiculous. Why is it relevant today? Well, I think always, obviously we always have that struggle as parents to make sure our kids, go down the path that we would like to see them go down. And there are always kids who, make decisions that are not good decisions, and they sometimes get away with it, sometimes they don't, and it leaves, like grieving is for the people who are left behind. It's if you're, I mean, if you believe in a higher spirit, they're gone and in a better place, but we're stuck here remembering them, and that's the hardest part. So, it's protecting ourselves, and we're parents are protecting their kids, but they're protecting themselves either, because if something bad happens, they know that, the repercussions of that. So there's nothing worse, for a parent to lose a child. There's what could be worse. So I think that'll always be relevant. And of course, today we have all kinds of drug issues, which are horrible. So we hope that's never enters into people's lives like it is today, and hopefully it'll change. But it probably won't. So we'll have to deal with this. And this is a show that does deal with a pretty serious subject. I think it's very, very relevant.
Footloose musical is still relevant today for many reasons. I think there's a lot of obviously family separation and stuff like that coming from Ren's corner, moving to a new town, having just left his hometown, basically with half of his family. I think that's a story that a lot of people can relate to, moving to a place that you've never been before, kind of like a fresh new start. I think that's a really impactful story to be able to see his hurt and then how he can grow from that, and also how Ethel, his mom's character, can grow from that as well. It's I think it's an incredible story because we could all learn something from somebody, even if they had just came to town or they've been here for years. I think it's important to give people the time of day and let them know that they are heard and their opinions matter, because 9 times out of 10 they're not the only one thinking that. The whole premise of this is that we can't dance, and Ren really wants us to dance. All the kids want to dance, we all want to dance, but it took him to be able to say that because we're too scared to be able to say something. Like, we already know how it is. We've lived here our whole lives, and we don't even want to shake anything up because we know how it's going to be. Now, Ren's never been here before, so he said, "Oh, I got you. I'll shake things up to its absolute core because it's fun." And to some, that might be a little bit annoying, but the kids respected that. We appreciated that, and at the end of the day, the adults did too. And it changed a lot of our minds. And I think that that's huge. I think that anything that we believe in life, and anything that we choose to do, or things that we choose to change, like, don't be afraid to speak up. And I think Footloose is a really great reminder of that.
I believe that the Footloose story is still relevant today. I think that's the reason why, is because the basis of the story is a town that's very set in its way, and someone new comes in and tries to change that around. I think that's something we deal with day in and day out in our country and the world. We have people who are very staunch in the way they believe things, and when people come in with new perspectives, sometimes it's hard to understand those and to see things from that perspective. And but I think it's a good thing that we're constantly being challenged on the way we think and the way we do things. And so I think that Footloose, while in a very, very different way, highlights those kind of issues. And I think it's a good thing that we're showing a story that I feel is still relevant very much in our time.
I believe that we're always battling elements that are suppressing us. And when it comes to something like music and dance, that those disciplines, that particular art that lifts one, even rap. I mean, even the kind of rap that I don't care for so much, that slams authorities, that slams police, that uses, the language that it uses because it's coming from an angry place, but that anger is not unfounded. So I can allow for that expression. It deserves to be framed as art because it's a cry. So it has relevance. So I think that anybody that suppresses any form of expression, it needs to be called out. So Footloose does that. It calls out the suppression of by this board, by these individuals, suppressing these people's need to be lifted from their misery. And I think that the people that the elders here sort of want to stay stuck in that. I think it's a classic universal story. You know, that it happens day in and day out, and it doesn't seem to be going away. So we continue to rail against that particular machine. And I think that's why it has relevance, and there's a universal element there, where whether it's music and dance, freedom of all kind, whatever the expression is, that it shouldn't be suppressed. One should have the right to freely express themselves. I think that's at the core of it all.
I'll say the thing that I think is going to surprise audiences is we have an incredible creative team. I think the thing that's going to surprise people is the fact that it's a sound that you've never heard in any Footloose musical. I mean, we've never had the same people in the same room, so it's a sound you've never heard. But it doesn't sound like the soundtrack, that's for sure. We've definitely honed in on it and curated it to sound great to what we feel like it should sound, and we feel very confident and comfortable in how we sound. I think that there's a lot of songs that are going on that you might hear a little bit of a different twang to it than you would have in the normal musical or even in the radio versions of the songs.
I think two things that will surprise audiences about this specific production of Footloose is that, again, I think, you can look at Footloose from a surface level and say, oh yeah, it's such a fun like pop rock show and I'm just going there to have a good time. But I think we've also really found kind of the more sincere, honest moments of the show too, that I think also really the more emotional parts of the show that will really, I think, bring the heart and soul of what this show is about and really touch audiences in that way too. Like they're going to enjoy themselves, of course, from the dancing and the singing naturally. But I think they're also going to walk out of the theater feeling very moved as well. And I think that's when you put on a good show, that you gave them both, and you had and another thing, and Michelle, is truly fantastic, but she also she said so herself that she's all about, choreographing dance pieces that kind of tell the story, that progress the story along. And I think, Footloose is so iconic in that you kind of know certain dances are going to happen or certain choreographic moments are going to happen, but she makes it new every time. And I think she's really switched it up and made something new. And it's just, it's refreshing, I think, for audiences. And I think it's just exciting and different. And I think that's what's really cool about putting on new productions of Footloose is that or any musical, is you can do it in a different way within the lines of the story.
I think that people will be surprised about how much we make the story prominent in this musical. Again, as I've said multiple times, it's not just your average Footloose of great singing, great dancing. It's something that's very real. And I think that they'll be surprised at how much the story is as important as the songs and the dances. But also, I think they'll be surprised at how talented our cast is. We just have a really, really awesome, eclectic cast. And I think that'll surprise some people that we were able to get all these people, because it's crazy to me.
That it is not just for kids. Just 13 suffered from the same thing. 13 was very much about adults, not just the 13-year-olds that performed the piece. Because the essence of that piece is that we all have a little more homework to do. And it's funny, the parallels between 13 and Footloose, because Footloose too, all of those adults, and even the young ones that sort of don't know any better, that are being led by the noses, the collective nose around, by the collective nose by the elders. They sort of don't know any better, and they want to do right and behave, listen to their folks, until this rebel comes along and helps them to see the light, how dancing is the bad thing, but that the adults, they have to be re-educated. it's not such a bad thing. What could be bad about? And what's interesting is that again we deal with a reverend who's lost his son, and our hero Ren comes at him by way of the Bible, where he says in Ecclesiastics, people are they're supposed to leap and dance. The Bible says that we are to leap and dance. So he brings that up, and I think that that's what really speaks to the reverend. Really makes him not initially, but eventually helps him to see the light because he's speaking the reverend language, if you will. My feeling about people and a theatrical experience is that I know some people find it hard to suspend their disbelief with musicals. A well constructed musical always moves the plot along, uh, continues to move the story along, and it is an extenuation of one's speaking voice to the sung voice. And many people just have a hard time with that, with buying into that reality. So it's hard. I don't want to push any square pegs into any round holes with anybody. If musical theater ain't your bag, then it just ain't your bag. If it is, and you have considerations because, well, you've heard that Footloose, doesn't have the best this or best that. Well, it does have Kenny Loggins music, and that's a plus. But try to abandon those considerations and give Footloose a shot. The music is wonderful, no denying. And it opens with that number, that Kenny Loggins number, and then you're off to the races. And so many other tunes in there, and heartfelt tunes, not just hardcore rock and roll, but there's some very lovely, sweet, heartfelt tunes as well. And I would just ask that you give it a shot. I don't want to force anybody into anything. But if you're looking for a fun evening in the musical theater, you can come here to the Simi Valley Performing Arts Center and see our production of Footloose. And I guarantee you'll probably take the ride.
People must go to this show because honestly, it's an incredible story. We have some incredible creatives on stage. You're going to see some of the production team actually on stage dancing with us and singing with us, Reverend Moore. And he's incredible. To see people do both has been incredible. But honestly, this show is just so fun. We're utilizing the full stage, utilizing the audience. It's an incredible time. You're going to hear some amazing singing, amazing dancing. These dancers have worked so hard. Like, I really do feel like this is like Broadway level on a very small stage. We have some amazing dancers on here and amazing singers on here. And if it's not Broadway right now, guarantee you're going to see a couple people that are in this show on Broadway. It's been incredible to watch them. And I think that you should too.
I think people should come see this specific production of Footloose because I think we have such an incredibly talented cast of actors, singers, dancers, storytellers, led by, an incredible director and choreographer that have also in their own right done amazing things in the professional world, that you will be seeing a show at a really high level that maybe you weren't expecting, but a show that really showcases people in their best light. And that being said, people that also are just enjoying themselves on stage. Like, we're having a blast up there, and we're truly just having so much fun. The camaraderie up there, the energy. We're enjoying ourselves so much that we want the audience to enjoy themselves as well. And also, again, bringing the heart and soul into the show. I people should come see this because there's a deeper message behind all of the dancing and singing and smiling, and there's more to it. And I think, I think that's important for everyone to experience.
People should see this production of Footloose because it's a ton of fun. It's just a blast. No matter what age, if you remember the old movie, if you don't, it's just such a great time. I think you'll have an amazing time just getting to see the cast up there and just rocking it and just having a ball. I think that it's a nostalgia factor for those who have seen the old movie. I think that you'll see things that that'll make you remind you of that time, but also things that are new and that can give you a fresh experience. And then again, I think that people should come see it because I think it's a story that has been told before, but is still very relevant today. And I think it'll touch some hearts. But I also think it'll get you up and dancing. So I think anybody should come and see it because it kind of gives you everything you need.
As you know, probably Panic is a 501c3. We're privately funded theater company. We rely on the sales. Thankfully, Simi Valley is very generous in the way they handle their participants, and they have things in place to make it reasonably cost efficient. But as you know, the theater is expensive, so that's one reason on the economic side. The second reason for me is it's just fun. It's a fun way to spend an afternoon. It's a fun, uplifting show. You'll leave smiling. You'll leave singing the tunes, and you'll fall in love with some of these characters. They're really, really good. And I go out afterwards and speak to the audience that remains, and they're shocked at they're like, "Where did you come from? What theater were you at before? What theater are you going to?" We're Panic Production. We're doing 4 weekends in Simi Valley, and we may get somebody that says, "Hey, we'd like you to do it at our theater," but that may not happen. 4 weekends is all we got to bring a little bit of joy to people's lives, and I think that we do that every time we perform.